So what we're going to do is we're going to take the next 15, 20 minutes just to sort of present out the salient, sort of key points that were discussed on each one of the tables. And that'll leave us some time at the end for a very special presentation for the Mythbusting Awards. So why don't we just take it in order? Every table had a number. We might as well start with table 1. Is there somebody here who wants to present out? Yes.
Okay, so table 1, we talked about specific training on best practices and guidance to help the overall federal acquisition community. So, we had a great discussion talking about some of the things that we talked about in the previous session about, setting aside the time for market research because, we don't have time. We don't have time to do this. It's not a viable excuse. We all understand that that's reality, but nonetheless, we have to overcome it. So we talked about just basically demonstrating the value of these things, because ultimately you're going to improve the outcomes and how to better create communication channels. So we talk about Mythbusters, and we talk about basically communicating. A lot of that focus has been externally between industry and government, which is obviously important. However, there's also a very important need internally between not only organizations and an agency, but across agencies to share that knowledge capturing best practices and things that work. We talked about the CIO Council, the Chief Acquisitions Council. We definitely talked about the need to create better marketing opportunities. Certainly this forum is one of them. But also to have OMB in particular and GSA, because they're doing a lot of these initiatives to really help that knowledge management process. In regards to knowledge management, we did talk about communities of practice. We talked about how there's ones already there, which are very good, not only at the Defense Acquisition Universities, so through their communities of practice, but also creating one internally, not only through SharePoint, but trying to capture the lessons learned, because the biggest problem right now is the workforce, and certainly this bathtub effect we discussed, where we've got a lot of newly trained folks or poorly trained folks, and then we've got a large group of folks that are very experienced, and we talk about that bathtub effect and how do we fix that, or we try to mitigate those issues with knowledge management. So we talked certainly about the mentoring program. DHS has probably, in my opinion, the best program for mentoring in government. So we would love to get more collaboration with DHS in regards to that program, what works, what doesn't, and then communicate that across agencies. And to also talk about on-the-job training, that just-in-time training, because certainly as a training provider, I know I hear a lot of the gripes from non-DoD folks in particular about how, because the way the FAI and DAU, Federal Acquisition Institute, and Defense Acquisition University were structured, I always joke that you rob the bank because that's where the money is. So DAU got a lot of the money, and FAI did not. So a lot of the FAI programs are DoD focused. FAI has heard that. They're working on that. But nonetheless, we still have to get the proper amount of training to the folks that matters. So hopefully there will be more web-based training, more training in internal agencies, and also more forums here. Trying to get participants of that training, that IPT process, the integrated product team. We did talk about the IG folks, the ethics folks, and getting those stakeholders involved up front and early in the process, such that a year doesn't go by of doing these programs and then a lawyer says, no, you can't do it, and then there's a year down.
So I mean, basically, you guys didn't cover a whole lot, did you?
No. Just a couple things to wrap up. We would love to see kind of, and it's there certainly with the Mythbusters memo, but also to kind of expand on those through kind of a fast facts section of like either ACT-IAC, I know we're doing this, but also at OPP, just to kind of to dig a little deeper into the kind of the issues with the Mythbusters, because as I mentioned, a lot of folks that I work with don't even know about Mythbusters, but let alone don't even know where to go to get this information. So if we can have those fast facts, that would be great, because we had a great quote at the table. If it's not in the street, then you're allowed to meet. So that's kind of the message that we want to get as far as Mythbusters and then IPT, so we can do some training there and get the people the relevant information today that they can use on the job right now to improve outcomes. So that's basically what we discussed.
If it's not on the street, you're allowed to meet.
Yeah.
Awesome. Table 2, who has somebody who wants to present out for table 2?
Hello. Okay. For table 2, the myth that we had was we can't meet one-on-one with a potential offer, and the recommendation was related similar to specific training on best practices and guidance. And our recommendation would be to kind of gear the training towards a more interactive learning environment, similar to what DH has, where you have a simulated role play specific to this particular issue. That way, the first thing you would need to do with the simulated role play is first engage industry so that you can understand what the issues are from their perspective, and then as well as the government. Then once you engage industry, you would need to then move it over to your acquisition personnel within the government and start that role-playing process and be able to stop in the middle of the role-playing scenarios to kind of train the acquisition workforce. Okay, you're saying that you can't meet with them, but why? And here's the reason why you can in this situation. Just so that they have kind of like a more realistic, simulated scenario where they're able to react in the normal way that they would react, and then understand why they had other options or other avenues that they could have considered. And then at that point, after you take an assessment of the success of that type of learning environment that's interactive, then you can bring in your higher level stakeholders such as OGC and your ethical officials and get them to be able to witness that actual process so that they can see that, in these scenarios, this is how it's explained, and then you get their buy-in at that point.
Great. So it sounds like you guys really started to think through how you can leverage some of the things that are already going on and make that more extensible across the community as well as within the agency. That's great. Table 3.
Okay, so we had the protest myth, and protesters we avoided attempt at all costs. And kind of the overarching theme, we had people from different agencies and from industry there at the table, and we kind of all decided that protesting can be a bad thing for everyone involved. But that the fear of protest was kind of the inhibiting factor there in implementation, so that the overriding theme would be stop being afraid in the protest process, and perhaps maybe incorporating some things about the Mythbustings and about the myths into core training, perhaps adding some to the annual ethics training, kind of getting that perception of, okay, now we just told you how bad you can get, what are your perceptions, so that we can tell you that you're wrong about having those perceptions, because that doesn't happen in every single case. And then adding some of the concepts around the Mythbusters to perhaps the COR guide, and added to a just-in-time training that occurs prior to procurement.
Okay. That reminds me that humans are inherently and notoriously poor at evaluating risk, right? So doing a better job of just helping people understand how to evaluate so they don't underestimate or overestimate. Makes a lot of sense. Table 4.
Right, okay. So at table 4, we also, as a myth, we can't meet one-on-one with potential offerers. And we had a good mix of folks at the table, from contracting officers, industry, program managers, and government outreach folks. And the common denominator in our discussion was that there needs to be better acquisition planning, and it speaks to the fact that once the program office knows their requirements, that they can then begin to have dialogue with industry and or the procurement shop, so that they have the opportunity to have a meaningful conversation with industry about the requirements on the front end. Another thing that we mentioned was from OFPP level, a guide and or best practices issued and disseminated to the boots on the ground, maybe all those registered within FATAS that actually are involved with the acquisition process. And also, gentleman, I'm sorry if I hear was from Treasury, he came up with a good suggestion that the items that are on the advanced acquisition plans, how many of those are actually on FedBizOps? Is there a way to measure that to see if we can gain some metrics there to determine where we're dropping the ball, so individuals feel they can't meet with industry? We felt like we dispelled that myth, but we busted it, man.
Busted. Excellent. Table 5.
And table 5 is also on the protests, but let's focus on behaviors to change in the process. So as we looked at it, it was really all of the players in the acquisition process. So figuring out how the program and the acquisition teams work better up front and make sure that the program understands their role in working with industry to understand what the marketplace looks like, what the requirements are like, encouraging the program offices to take a more outcomes-based approach to find what the problem statement is and what they want, and let industry then inform them about what the potential solutions are that could come into play. Having a communication plan to better sync up the activities between the contracting office and the acquisition office, to make sure that the program people are involved in making sure that the evaluation criteria are specific to the procurement, gives them the opportunity to evaluate an award for innovation, and make sure that the acquisition strategy aligns to, if they're needing an innovative approach, that it's not LPTA, for example. From a leadership perspective, making sure that the contracting staff has coverage so that it's not a stigma that you have a protest associated with you, but you have the cover from the leadership to keep taking innovative approaches. And then again, to make sure that everyone understands to provide more information during debriefs, because the process has integrity to it. So long as you went through and done everything correctly, to provide more information about it, and to work with the general counsel to make sure that they're on board with that as well.
Table 6.
Okay, we were working with the myth, we can't meet one-on-one with the potential offer, and also the white paper recommendation of changes in behavior. And we had a good mix at our table of government and industry. So one thing we started with is that both sides have to know what you cannot do, and to make that clear in your one-on-ones. And also, similar to table 2, we were discussing a mock BMP theater. So understanding what industry has to go through before they get to a decision, a bid, no bid decision. It's a lot of information, and it's very difficult to obtain without those one-on-ones or a really concrete industry day. So we thought a mock BMP theater style, and we would have a bring a Fed for a day session. So bring your federal customer in, and as someone else mentioned, very important, bring your ethics and OGC officers and ensure that they're learning from this mock theater. One of our industry persons said there was no trouble getting a one-on-one, but wasn't sure that that information was really being fed up, or anywhere for that matter, that it was just being ingested. So we thought it would be good if it could be elevated, not only the information that was being provided in the meeting, but also if during the meeting, let's say if it was with a program manager or a contracting or acquisition official, they said, no, I'm sorry, I can't discuss that. Report it on both sides so that they understand that, we couldn't go any further and obtain this information. We also discussed the vendor management offices, call it industry liaison office, call it a VMO. How are the VMO people, what kind of assistance are they receiving from their management, from OFPP or others? And also CTOs, the chief technology officers, usually they're the ones that will meet with anyone because their job is to understand existing and emerging technologies, true, relevant to what their agency may be procuring, but are they sharing that information with the VMO? It seems like there has to be a relationship, a communication line between the VMO and the CTO. We also like the idea of down selecting to allow those that are down selected to come in and do a due diligence, and that's where you can really provide a wealth of information to help with that bid no bid decision. And we thought that was better than an industry day.
Yeah, I'm glad somebody brought that up. That's great. Great. Well, great discussions. Really good feedback. My faithful assistant and actually the SIG chair Ben here has been taking all these notes, so I think we'll have a lot of good stuff coming out of this.